Evidence suggests that taking part in a cultural or creative activity can have a measurable impact on mental and physical health and well-being. Museums are rising to the challenge and are increasingly aware of the value that their resources and collections can bring to individual and community health and well-being. The Live and Learn programme at National Museums Northern Ireland sought to engage older people with our collections and sites. During a period of 6 years, we provided more than 20,000 learning opportunities for people over the age of 50. The Live and Learn programme came to a close at the end of September 2015. National Museums, along with the Age Friendly Museums Network, took the opportunity to organise a seminar for those working in the field, stimulating debate and discussion on the role that museums can play. This included senior professionals from health and social care, museums and the voluntary sector who were and are interested in developing cross-sector projects. Marking the end of the Live and Learn programme, we talked to some of the professionals who work with people in the community to find out if they feel that museums can make a real difference to the health and well-being of older people.
Yes, I think that museums offer a wide variety of different ways for older people to get involved and to engage with collections and exhibitions. I think sometimes perhaps there are certain barriers like lack of awareness, or perhaps there's associations of maybe that museums are quite elite or academic, and perhaps that they're seen as more somewhere for schools and younger audiences. But certainly museums, with the wealth of collections and the variety of different subjects and topics that they represent, they offer a huge amount for older people. But older people also offer a huge amount to museums in terms of their lived experience and their knowledge. So I think it's quite a reciprocal relationship, and I think that really the work of museums now is to try and expand on how they engage with their audiences to really draw out what that reciprocal relationship can be.
Yes, I think museums have a great deal of relevance to not only older people but everyone. But in particular, my experience as Live and Learn project officer, where I've worked with people aged 50 up to 95 on some occasions, you can really see the benefits, and the benefits that come out when they come onto museum sites are the fun aspect. It's the being active, walking around museums, keeping moving, making friends. Some of these people may have lost their partners along the way, a husband or wife, and often are living isolated in an isolated way, or maybe with depression. And I have seen it happen where when people take up the challenge and come in and engage with the learning experience, they often find that that helps their personal situation. I also think that museums and older people go well together because they have so much to offer museums. Recently we heard the story of a 95-year-old man living outside Omagh who has so much experience of World War I, of rural ways of life and different aspects, and tying in with his local community. And to be able to share those stories and record them in some way or hold them is very valuable. Also, intergenerational work, children from primary schools working with older people, has been a fantastic experience for both the older people and the children themselves. Joint learning, shared experience and shared fun.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I think that there are lots of barriers as well to older people using museums. I think there's massive relevance in terms of what museums could do for older people. A lot of it is about engaging at an appropriate level with people, things they're interested in, approaching it in a different way. And it may be just that older people often think of museums as places you take children, things you have done in the past, and they don't think about it at this stage in their life. So it's giving them showing opportunities, ways in which it might be possible to use museums that may connect with them.
The most important things are access. I found working on the Live and Learn project and the Treasure House project that is one of the major things. Setting up the Treasure House project, we found that people didn't come to museums because they were worried about access. Would they be able to get in the door? Would it be too cold? Would they have to walk miles? So that definitely for me is the number one thing.
I think the things to consider is engagement. And I suppose again I'm thinking of Old Montreux, we're rural. So it's how we reach out to these people. And we need to keep it simple. And we need to keep it real. And the greatest thing in life is experiential. And I think that's where probably the museums are ahead of everyone here. They can make it real and experiential. And it's reaching out to these people and having the access, and that's from all walks of our community and really tapping into that.
Okay, for people who work in museums, I think it's really important to go out from the museum and meet people in the community. And that is people who work with older people in the community. So people like Age UK, Stroke Association, Alzheimer's Society. Go and meet people who actually work with older people in the community and work and find partners to work with. That's the best way to do it. And then you can share your expertise.
Well, I think the cost is an issue. And in terms of what we offer, we tend to make sure that people have transport if they want to use the museum, if they want to go someplace. We also, in some of the work that we do, we make sure that people are accompanied either by volunteers or by other people who are interested, maybe pairing people up who have a similar interest. And then we also make sure that people have refreshments if possible, because they mightn't be able to afford to buy tea and coffee and stuff in museums. So when we put on initiatives, we make sure that that's all provided. But I think that's the sort of thing that's really good about this sort of work, is that all of that's been thought about, and making things relevant and making things appropriate for older people. I mean, obviously access is an issue, but those things are being thought about more and more now and are being taken seriously, and I think that's really fantastic. Some people are very hard to source, hard to find, maybe they're very socially isolated. So it's important to partner up with different engaging current organisations like your council, local councils, like health centres and GPs, like the mental health community care team. By linking up with these who are already in the community and have the contacts, then it's with these partners that then we can maybe engage in inviting people in.
I think you have to make them places where they see themselves, where there's a mirror, where there's something there which shows these are places for them, by the way in which you programme, by the way in which you have exhibitions there, about the kind of interpretation you have in the museum. And I think it's seeing lots of older people, the way in which museums have been really, really good at engaging with, say, family audiences. And families go there because they have really brilliant facilities. And maybe if we made facilities more appropriate for older people in museums, it would encourage them as well.
Yes, I definitely do, and I think we've seen a lot of evidence in that in the Live and Learn programmes, and we're hearing a lot of evidence about the impact of museum programmes on older people in terms of preventative healthcare and so on. So yes, I genuinely feel there's a major contribution to be made. I think the fact that sort of older people stay engaged, intellectually sort of involved, and have the opportunity to socialise, and quite often is sort of like a large public space, which is used by a whole range of other sort of users, is a very, very positive thing. So yeah, in many senses, I mean, especially if you're facing sort of social isolation and loneliness, and you're not really part of a sort of like you don't really have that active lifestyle, I think there's a real opportunity for museums to be involved there and offer something which is entirely different, which will help you to sort of like, to move along, I suppose, and progress.
Absolutely, categorically, I think they can. I think the examples that we've seen from museums like the Ulster American Folk Park, like the Maudsley Hospital and Tate Modern, absolutely sing out that museums can have a really strong impact on people's experiences. And often it's relatively modest things that make a difference. So it may be people being friendly to somebody, having this social connection, so that people who are lonely and isolated can feel as if they have connections with people and have social interaction with people, can make a massive difference. So often it's relatively small things that have a huge impact on people's lives. And it's feeling as if you're alive, feeling as if you're part of society, as if you're relevant and significant and valued. And I think museums can do that for older people.
Yes, I know that they can. I can't categorically say that they make a difference on every older person that's participated, but in my experience of 6 years working with the museums as Live and Learn project officer, outreach and on site, the evaluations that I've had, the testimonials that I've received, the verbal feedback that I've received has shown that this engagement really matters. And particularly that the fact that they're engaging in activities or learning skills with other people. They're making friends.
I certainly do. I mean, I think we're running a project at SLAM called Journeys of Appreciation, and that project is one where we've brought older people from the wards who are in acute services, and we accompany them with clinicians into the museums and galleries. And that has been fantastic in terms of just, the sheer joy in people's eyes and the amount of talking that they've done about the initiative when they've come back to the ward. And when we've interviewed them afterwards, they didn't just talk about what they saw, but they talked about the trees in the garden, they talked about the flowers, they talked about being able to chat to other people who are in the museums. It was the whole experience rather than just the seeing of the art or the artefacts or the objects that they were handling.
Well, having worked on the Live and Learn project for 6 years, I would say absolutely they can. We've worked with a variety of different audiences, primarily over the age of 50, for the last 6 years, and we have seen people's confidence in engaging with museums and engaging with new learning, both formally and informally, increase. We've seen connections between people and between generations be fostered through engaging with museums. So I think certainly museums aren't going to solve all problems that are faced by older age or solve all health or well-being problems, but they can play an essential role in creating an environment where ageing is a positive factor.
Totally. I've just completed evaluations with the Treasure House project, and we have got a 90% rate of people who say it has made a difference. And it makes a difference because museums, again, for everybody, and it is the joining in society that people really like. For example, yesterday we went to the Royal Ulster Academy, and the group said that they liked the fact that they were seeing work that was very relevant and was actually in the media at that time, and they could go back and tell their friends and their family that they'd seen something very current. So it's not about doing reminiscence programs in museums and looking always at the past. It's very important to also look at the future and show people things that are happening now and are exciting.
Well, when it works, it's absolutely amazing. For example, we've worked recently with people who live in care homes, and they've come to the museum, and they came for a day, and when they went home they were so alert and excited by it all. In fact, I got a phone call the other night by somebody who couldn't sleep because she was so excited about her day. So I think it makes a huge impact. And it's not just an event at the museum, it's the build up to it, it's going back afterwards and talking about it or sharing it with other people.
Well, I think probably the best example of using museum programmes with older people is obviously the Live and Learn programme, which we've had within National Museums Northern Ireland for this last 6 years. And that has delivered a fantastic change in the lives of many older people. Anecdotally, you will see people who have come to the museum maybe for the first time become engaged with something which is new and novel to them. And then sometime later they may come back independently. Now, to me, the holy grail really in many ways is actually about being there to deliver a service for older people, then valuing that service and then coming back independently. And I've seen people coming back with their own friends and family and grandchildren. That's been absolutely great. And in fact, I suppose the fact that the Big Lottery have chosen to fund another programme, which is the Clanmill programme, on the strength of what we've done with Live and Learn, would be an indication that they would also feel, that an important funder would also feel that we've made a contribution to the lives of older people in Northern Ireland and have delivered something which is of real benefit to them.
I have observed, firstly, differences in museum staff. I have observed museum staff becoming much more aware of the range of people that are out there, the range of abilities and disabilities within our older members of the population. And when we've brought some training knowledge to staff, they've really taken it on board. That in turn makes the museum, makes them welcome people in, and people will say, oh, that guide was so fantastic. Billy helped me make a poker, he was brilliant, he took loads of time with me. Well, nice man. Things like that, so they got to know people by name and everything. And some of them then have gone on to volunteer to be part of the Live and Learn project. I have a person now who volunteers as a storyteller. I have another older person who comes in and does gardening in the polytunnel. And I have another older person, volunteer, who plays fiddle. And he will come with his friend on the banjo if we're having a traditional day, and he will play in the pub, in Riley's pub. Now that's a great sense of well-being for him. And he's contributing to the museum.
Definitely seen a difference in regards to sense of joy and engagement and conversation and connectedness and interest that can be sort of noticed when people speak about the collection or the objects they might be handling, fun, and being able to relate to the collection and the objects. So definitely seen an interest, and also for the staff that are accompanying the patients, fun for them and learning about the patient, the service user, learning about what their life more holistically really. I think it provides a lot of mutual shared learning and experience for all participants.
The difference that we've observed when we've used museums and galleries is that we've observed people changing in terms of their ability to interact with us when they came back to the wards. We've also noticed a difference in the staff. The staff that accompany people to museums, they themselves have changed. They've had long conversations with people that they've never had before, and they got to know people a lot better. And I think that difference, I think the fact that people get out and about and see something completely different and get to experience art and get to experience that level of culture, I think it has a real significant impact on people's well-being and mental health.
I suppose the greatest thing, I think you tap in the tapestry of their youth, and their childhood. In essence, they're like walking down that again. And when I've heard the stories back and listened to the different clients that have done the programme, it's amazing just to see what has triggered about their own childhood and the memories and the laughter and about the old forge, all that, the richness in it, and especially with the ladies as well, and it's sort of just stepping back in time and to really, to really embody with everything that was good about it. I suppose time was a lot easier then, so it is, but I just think there's a great richness in it.
It's been amazing, the response. I've been meeting people outside of the museum and doing their shopping, and they'll come across to me full of smiles and say, "That was great, I really enjoyed that. Are you doing any more? I didn't know I could do that." And I think that's very satisfying for me as a facilitator, for people to say they didn't realise that they could write, because that was the whole point of the exercise, is to dip into those creative juices that all people have.
Sometimes older people think that museums are not for them because of social reasons. They say that, one of the quotes I had, it was only for educated people or for snobs. And because growing up, they thought that actually it wasn't for them if they came from a certain class. And you're trying to break down that barrier and say, no, again, museums are for everybody. And also we find that the older people's programmes, Live and Learn and Treasure House, they're very, very social programmes. So there's a lot of chat, a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, and also we have tea and cake as well, which we wouldn't have with any other group, because that's again very important, making people feel comfortable and making people feel very welcome in the museum.
Well, that's something that's really current within museums at the moment, is thinking about what role museums can play in health and wellbeing. And of course, more broadly, the arts and culture and heritage, what role those sectors can play in health and wellbeing. And it's certainly something that the Museums Association is taking forward with the Museums Change Live programmes. I think absolutely. I don't think we necessarily have really cracked kind of what the key focus or the key role museums can play as yet, but certainly through the 6 years of Live and Learn, we've definitely found that we can support people in being more active, we can support people in sharing their experiences and supporting each other, that we can encourage learning and we can encourage connections and enhanced engagement, and all of those factors feed into somebody's health and their well-being. I think well-being in particular is a certain area that there could be a lot more focus on in the next few years within museums. And I think within Northern Ireland, the fact that we have the 5 ways to well-being being promoted by the Health and Social Care Trusts and the Public Health Agency is really important, because museums can be exploring how their programmes can support the 5 ways to wellbeing when they're working with older audiences. I think that's probably going to be the key to future delivery.
The greatest shift in mental health at the moment is to do with the called recovery. And recovery is about challenging stigma, it's about challenging isolation, it's about normalisation, it's about social inclusion. And if I was going to look at any programme that I think captures all that, I think it's tapping into museums. In some ways, I think the museums might be a bit like mental health, in that the ordinary man on the street doesn't realise the richness and the variety of our museums. And sometimes people don't understand the whole concept of mental health, whereas I do think the two really lend themselves together, and I do think museums have so much to offer in health and well-being in society today.
Oh, absolutely, yes. There's lots of evidence now coming out that it is improving health and well-being, but you can see it when you're working with these groups. It's very rewarding for staff as well to see how people respond to working with them and being in museums. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think they can. I think museum programmes can definitely improve health and wellbeing. I think there's a well-trodden path in terms of engagement with arts, for instance, and issues like dementia. But I think increasingly there's an awareness that sort of museum and cultural engagement generally can have a positive impact on the health and well-being of older people. I suppose the onus really is in museums to prove that, but there's no doubt about it that those impacts are there and those impacts can be measured. And that may well be in terms of the level of engagement of people, their levels of self-esteem, self-confidence, and just a general impact on the health and well-being, which I think it can be observed and also sort of measured.
I do, absolutely. When you come from an environment, a nursing home especially, when all they see is the 4 walls day in, day out, we're not better taken to the folk park, to any museum, where somewhere along the line they're going to see something that'll spark a memory, that'll get them talking. In one instance again, in the folk park here, we took a guy down and we came to the bit of the Titanic, and he was able to tell us that he actually worked on the same dock that the Titanic was launched from. So it was fantastic again. It's good to get them out into the environment.
I think they definitely can. I think there's something that I know I can feel by going into, say, an art gallery and wandering around a space and contemplating, looking at a painting quietly. Can be lots of people in the space as well, but just connecting with it, and it sort of takes me to a different place. So I think that museums can definitely feed parts of our health and well-being in ways which we probably underestimate, that we haven't really valued. They give us a sense of a different world. They give us a sense of calmness. They give us a sense of being part of something bigger, and I think that's really important for our health and well-being.
Absolutely. Again, we have evaluations which show that people do feel better. A lot of the time when the group comes in, they say that they hadn't felt like getting up to come to the thing in the morning, but they're so glad that they have done in the afternoon. And we have a lot of people with physical disability and sometimes mental disability coming to the museum, and again we're making it accessible, we're making them very welcome. So if somebody might have an oxygen tank with them and not be feeling very good, but at the end the chat and the talk, you know, and the general social mix makes people feel better. And again, you're engaging society, you're living your life.
They have indeed, yeah. And one in particular, one of the days we were down in the forge, we had a couple of guys down making pokers. And through the day we realised that the guy that was actually taking the course was on the same boat in the Royal Navy as one of the guys that was with me. So they were able to talk about different parts of the boat, who worked where, and all the different nicknames. It was just fantastic to listen to the two of them. Brilliant.
Well, a museum that knows its audience, is well tuned to the needs of older people. It's basically a welcoming space where they feel as if they're valued, their contribution is valued, and they can coexist with everybody else and on exactly the same basis, get exactly the same benefits and the same resources from the museums as any other section of society.
I think it's about being conscious of the needs of older people. So it may be, for instance, in galleries having places to sit down. It may be about thinking like the cafe, the cost of things, you know, that it can be very expensive to buy cups of tea in museum cafes, but it's a really critical part of the experience. It's about access issues, but it's about intellectual issues as well. It's about how we frame things for older people, but it's also about ensuring that we create environments where older people aren't ghettoised by that we're always doing it just for older people, but it's part of what we're providing for everybody.
Well, I think an age-friendly museum should welcome all ages. If we're talking about age-friendly, it should be from early years right through the age spectrum to older age. I also think that we need to involve older people to make an age-friendly museum. You can't just say, well, we run programmes for older people, therefore it is age-friendly. We need to actually have people actively involved, whether that be in focus groups, as museum participants, as independent visitors to the museum, or as advocates within the community.
I think it's really important to think about all aspects of the person's life and all aspects of what their needs might be. So if they need to go off for a cigarette, and I know we shouldn't be advocating that, but sometimes with people with mental health problems do. But also it's time if people need respite, you know, if it's all too much for them, that there's a place for them to go and just be for a while. And that happens a lot in the programmes that we offer. There's a lot of time out, you know, so there's lots of cups of tea, there's lots of little chats, little side chats, as well as the art or the initiatives that they're being involved in.
I think everybody who's worked on the Live and Learn project would say it's absolutely essential, is that we offer opportunities for creativity, for people to make and to respond and to explore their own opinions and thoughts in relation to the subjects that we're exploring. So that could be through discussions, absolutely, but to actually use artistic means of expressions, from photography to dance, movement, drama, art making. All of those are different ways that people learn new skills, they actively engage, they embrace their own creativity and they challenge themselves, but it also allows them to explore their own opinions and responses in a way that they then have something to take home and reflect upon, something tangible, and I think that's absolutely fundamental as well.
We did, especially in some of the days when we came here, regardless of whether it's the Live and Learn or other projects that we came to. On the way back, they did nothing to talk about it. And ever since actually, there's 2 or 3 of them asking me regularly any chance to come back to the folk park again, because they thoroughly enjoyed it.
The tea cosy making. The tea cozies was brilliant. And everybody had a different tea cosy and they all looked well.
Well, I think there's never enough. There's never enough resources for this sort of work. I think what people need to do is to take this sort of work seriously and recognise the importance of it, and recognise that this isn't a nice add-on. It's a very important aspect of improving well-being and improving mental health. I think commissioners need to be commissioning this sort of work as well as mainstream mental health provision. And I also think that people need to get together and collaborate around funding initiatives that understand the whole package, that understand the package of provision. So you've got mainstream provision, which is where I work in secondary mental health, and then you've got primary care, which has a lot to work, that could really work quite significantly with museums and galleries, and then you've got the voluntary sector, which is an awful lot to offer as well.
I think what we can uniquely offer older people is the ability to engage with an authentic heritage object from our collection, either in your own community or in a museum context.
What do you think?
Yes. What's up, Mrs.? What's up, Lord?
See if anybody else can get the word for it.
No.
Shuffle. There, that's the very word. The shuffle. That's the shuffle. That's the shuffle.
A big clap.
Big clap. A big clap. Very good. You remembered it, so you could hold it. There you go. So if you worked in the mills, and there were lots of mills around this area, that's the shuffle. Took the thread back.